That boy was Adam, Rafi's older brother. And Adam was missing 5 days ago. Adam had left for school. He never came back. Their mother screamed his name into the night. Their father searched the roads and woods. The police came, made notes, asked questions, and left. Maybe he ran away, they said. Kids do that. But Rafi knew. Adam would never run away. Not from him, not from their mother. Without saying goodbye, since that day Rafi had searched every morning, every evening. He hadn't slept more than a few hours. He followed broken trails, listened to whispers of wind through the grass, and watched the birds fly in strange directions. No one believed him, no one helped, but something in his heart screamed that Adam was near. On this morning, just before the sun peeked over the hills, Rafi's ears caught a strange noise. A sound he couldn't explain to soft knocks like fists on a wall. It came from beyond the orchard, in a place where the land dipped into silence. Curious and terrified, Rafi followed the sound. It led him to an old, forgotten field full of rusted tools and crumbling fences, and there, half buried under weeds and moss, was something unnatural, a heavy, round metal door. Rafi dropped to his knees and cleared away the dirt. His fingers trembled as they touched the cold steel. It was real. It wasn't a dream. Completely sure he had heard Adam from beneath that hatch. He ran faster than ever before, toward the road, toward help. At the edge of town, a police car sat beneath a leaning tree. A tired officer stood beside it, sipping cheap coffee from a paper cup, looked up surprised as the dusty boy dashed toward him. Please, please come, Rafi shouted, breathless. In the ground. He's trapped. He's under a door, please, you have to come. The officer blinked. His name was Officer Trent, and he had seen a lot in his 18 years of duty, but nothing like this. A barefoot boy with fire in his eyes begging to dig beneath the earth. Wanted to dismiss it. Another fairy tale. Another lost child hoping for a miracle. But something in Rafi's voice made him pause. It wasn't the words, it was the desperation behind them. The way his hands shook, the tears carving streaks through the dust on his face. Against every instinct, Trent put down his coffee. Show me, he said. Rafi nodded and turned, leading the officer down the path. They walked in silence, the grass swallowing their footsteps. The deeper they went, the quieter it became, like even the wind was afraid to speak. When they reached the hatch, Trent stopped. It was real, an iron door, sealed shut, old but intact. It's the kind used in bunkers during wars, not something you'd expect in a peaceful village. He crouched, ran his fingers over the rust, then placed both hands on the handle. It groaned loudly, resisting, until finally it gave way with a sharp clank. They both leaned forward. A shaft, deep, pitch black. A metal ladder ran along the side, disappearing into the darkness. Her smell was foul, thick with moisture and decay. Then, without warning, 2 soft knocks echoed from below. Trent jerked back. Rafi fell to his knees, sobbing. I told you he's in there. Officer Trent's spine stiffened. The sound was unmistakable. 2 faint knocks rising from the belly of the earth. He had heard hundreds of sounds in his career, cries, gunshots, even screams. But this sound chilled him in a way none of those ever had, because it wasn't just sound. It was a plea. He turned to look at Rafi, the boy's small frame curled on the dirt beside the hatch, his fingers still gripping the photograph. His eyes were wide, swollen with tears. But there was no fear in them now, only heartbreak and hope. I told everyone, Rafi whispered. Nobody listened. Not my teacher, not the neighbors. But I kept looking. I knew he was down there. Officer. Trent reached for his radio, his voice cracking as he called for backup. Unit 5 requesting immediate support at Sector 13 Westfield. Possible child recovery. Bring medical, bring lights. Bring everything. He didn't wait for a reply. He stood at the mouth of the hatch, staring into the abyss below. The ladder looked old, possibly unsafe, but he had no choice. Couldn't ask a 10-year-old to carry this alone, not when he was the only one who had believed enough to find it. He looked at Rafi again. I'm going down there, son. Stay here. If anything happens, if anyone comes, don't move. Rafi nodded quickly, wiping his tears. Please bring him back, please.
Trent took a deep breath and adjusted the flashlight on his vest.
Then slowly, 1 foot at a time, he began descending the ladder. Each step echoed hollow in the chamber, swallowed by the silence. The deeper he went, the colder it became. The smell thickened mold, wet concrete, and something else. He didn't want to name. As he reached the bottom, the beam of his light cut through the dark, revealing cracked concrete walls, cobwebs thick as curtains, then debris scattered like forgotten memories. Then he heard it. A whimper, soft, faint like a dream trying to stay alive. He turned the beam toward the sound. In the far corner, barely visible for small figures huddled together, thin trembling, covered in dirt. One of them, taller than the others, had his arms stretched protectively around the younger two. His eyes blinked against the light. His lips were dry, cracked, but they moved. "You're not them," the boy said, voice dry as sand. "No," Trent whispered, walking forward, his heart pounding. "I'm here to take you home." The taller boy blinked slowly. "Rafi? Is he safe?" Trent froze. It was him. This was Adam. "Yes, he's right above us," Trent said softly. He never stopped looking. Adam's legs buckled as he tried to stand. Trent caught him, holding his thin body carefully. As he did, his flashlight fell across the faces of the other 3 children, 2 girls and 1 boy, all no older than 9. All of them wore the same hollow expression, fear mixed with disbelief. Adam was trembling. Told them to stay quiet. "I blocked the hatch from inside with boxes. I didn't want the bad men to hear." "You did good, son," Trent whispered, wrapping his arm around the boy. "You kept them safe." Above ground, the backup team had arrived. Paramedics, officers, even reporters drawn by the frantic radio calls, but Rafi didn't notice any of them. He sat frozen, staring at the hatch. Every second felt like an eternity then. The radio on an officer's belt crackled. "We found them. All 4 alive." There was a gasp. Someone cheered. Others clapped, but Rafi just sat still, his eyes locked on the darkness.
Don't leave.
When the rope began to move, slowly pulling someone upward, did he rise. A small hand broke through the hatch. Then a tangle of hair, and a face, pale, bruised, but alive. "Adam!" Rafi screamed. He ran. Fast, as if the ground itself had disappeared. The moment their eyes met, time collapsed. Adam reached out with what little strength he had. Rafi crashed into his arms, and both brothers fell to the ground, holding each other tightly, crying with every ounce of pain and joy their small bodies could carry. "I thought I lost you," Adam whispered. "I told them," Rafi sobbed. "I told everyone. I didn't stop." All around them, silence fell. Officers, paramedics, even reporters turned away, blinking back tears. For a moment, the world paused to honor what it was witnessing, not just survival, but the raw, unshakable power of love. The other 3 children were lifted out, one by one, wrapped in blankets and rushed to ambulances. They were scared but safe, thanks to Adam, who had kept them alive on sips of water from a leaking pipe and whispers of courage in the dark. No one knew who had built that underground space. Some said it was part of an old war shelter. Others whispered darker things, a trafficking ring using forgotten tunnels to hide stolen children. The truth was still hidden, but one thing was clear: the hatch should have never been reopened, and yet, if it hadn't been for, lives would have vanished without a trace. But a 10-year-old boy named Rafi refused to let his brother be forgotten. The sun was climbing higher now, casting long golden beams over the field that had once been a place of secrets. But for Rafi, time stood still. His arms remained locked around his brother's frail frame, unwilling to let go as, though releasing, he might somehow return him to that underground prison. Adam was wheeled into the waiting ambulance, his hands still clutching Rafi's. The boy refused to let go, even when a paramedic tried gently to separate them. "I'm his brother," he whispered. "I'm going with him." The paramedic paused, looked into Rafi's dirt-streaked face, and nodded. As the vehicle doors closed behind them, the sound of sirens filled the air. But inside, all was quiet. Rafi sat by Adam's side, holding his hand, watching his chest rise and fall, and bruises lined his arms. His eyes fluttered shut as the 4 began to drip into his veins. And for the first time in days, he was safe. But the trauma hadn't ended. It had only changed shape. That night, while news outlets broadcast the story of the boy who found the forgotten, and investigators roamed the field with flashlights and evidence kits, Rafi lay awake in a stiff hospital chair. Staring at the ceiling, he couldn't stop hearing the knock. 2 taps in the dark. What if he had ignored it? What if he hadn't returned the next day? What if the officer had dismissed him like everyone else had? He thought of the others, the kids who weren't found, the stories no one told, the mothers who waited by the window for a knock that never came. He stood quietly and walked into the hallway. Officer Trent was there, leaning against the wall outside Adam's room, arms crossed. His eyes were tired, haunted but alert. "Officer," Rafi said, his voice small. Trent looked down, couldn't sleep. "Dada." Rafi shook his head. There was a pause between them, heavy with everything that had happened. Then Rafi whispered, "There were more kids. I think Adam saw more before he was taken to that place. He said there were voices." Trent straightened. "He said that?" Rafi nodded. "But they weren't there when you found them. What if... what if they moved them?" Words hit like a hammer. Trent's mind raced. It made sense. If this hatch was just one holding place, what if others still existed? What if the monsters who built it were still watching, still using? He knelt to Rafi's level. "Do you remember anything else? Anything your brother said?" Rafi thought. Hard. Then he frowned. "The night before he disappeared, told me he saw a van near the grain silo. 2 men, no headlights. Thought they were stealing, but they didn't see him. Never told anyone else." Trent stood. "I want you to stay with your brother," he said firmly. "You've done enough. More than enough." Then he walked away, his mind already forming a plan. The next morning, under an overcast sky, Officer Trent returned to the field, not to the hatch, but to the grain silo nearby. It had stood there for decades, rusted and forgotten. Locals avoided it. Kids joked about it being haunted. No one ever went near, but Trent did. He walked the perimeter, noting tire tracks half buried in the mud. Stepped inside, dust rising. In thick clouds. Everything was quiet, too quiet. Then he saw it. A patch of floor different from the rest. Cleaner, newer. He dropped to one knee. Pressed against it, hollow, he radioed headquarters. Possible second chamber. "I need a team now." Meanwhile, Adam had woken up in the hospital, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on Rafi. "You stayed?" he whispered. "Always," Rafi replied, gripping his brother's fingers. Adam's lips quivered. "Die." "Heard them, Rafi. The bad men. They talked about moving us to another place, a bigger place." Rafi swallowed. "We told the officer. He's checking now." Adam turned his face to the window. "I wanted to scream for you every night, but I couldn't. If they heard me, they'd take the others." "I know," Rafi whispered. "Kept them safe." "You're my hero." "No," Adam murmured. "You are." At the silo, the team broke through the hidden floor panel, and what they found made seasoned officers. Gasp, narrow tunnel, freshly dug leading downward. Not concrete this time. Abandoned, active. They followed it, and at the end, another room, empty beds, chains on the wall, crates with half-eaten food, and one red-shoed small like a child's. It wasn't over, but it had begun, the unraveling because of a boy who refused to accept silence, and a brother who whispered hope into the dark. The underground chamber beneath the silo was silent, but the air vibrated with something unseen, like the walls remembered the cries they had once absorbed. Officer Trent stood still, the beam of his flashlight skimming across the cold stone and broken restraints. Each mark on the wall telling stories that no child should ever live through: a shoe, a blanket folded too neatly, a worn teddy bear tucked into the corner like it was left behind in a rush. It was clear they had moved, but not long ago. The scent of damp wood and faint smoke still lingered. Whoever had operated from this hidden base had been here recently, and they had taken their victims with them. Outside, rain began to fall, thin streaks against the overgrown field. Officer Trent radioed in what he found, but even as he spoke, he could feel something shift deep inside. This wasn't over. This was bigger than he thought. These were not isolated crimes. This was a system, and someone was still running it. Back at the hospital, Adam struggled to sleep. Even though the bed was clean and the room was bright, his mind returned to the dark every time he closed his eyes. He would see the hatch close again, feel the silence settle like a tomb, hear the muffled whimpers of the younger one's boys. Like little Marat, who cried for his mother in the night and then never woke up, he sat up, sweating. Rafi was already at his side. "Nightmare?" asked quietly. Adam nodded, biting his lip to hold back tears. Do they know where the others are? The ones they moved. Rafi looked away, unsure how to answer. He didn't want to lie, but he also didn't want to let fear return to his brother's face. They're still looking, he said finally. But they're getting closer, because of you. Adam shook his head. Because of us. Detective Faris Sahin, a seasoned investigator brought in after the silo discovery, stood with Officer Trent in front of a detailed map now covered in red pins, rural fields, abandoned buildings, drainage systems. Every location had a pattern. This isn't random, Faris said firmly. They've mapped out a network. Each chamber is connected, short-term holding, then transportation always at night. No traffic cameras, no nearby homes. Trent's jaw tightened. So, where's the next one? Farah hesitated, then pointed to the west side of the map. They're an old textile factory, burned down in the 90s, never rebuilt. It matches their pattern, isolated, unguarded, forgotten. We need to go in. That evening, as the sky turned copper over the city, a quiet convoy of unmarked cars pulled up to the shell of the factory. Vines had overtaken the brick walls. The windows gaped like broken eyes. But inside, something stirred. The team breached silently, and what they saw inside didn't just horrify them, enraged them. Beds again, but this time, children. 2 adults, guards, surprised mid-meal, one trying to run, the other frozen in terror. No one escaped. The children, wide-eyed and fragile, were led out carefully one by one. Some could barely walk, others hadn't spoken in days. Among them was Murat, Adam's Murat. When they brought Murat to the hospital, Adam didn't believe it at first. His legs trembled. Day's hand shook, but then he saw the familiar curls of hair. The same oversized striped sweater, and the way Murat clung to the nurse's hand. Adam ran. Murat, he cried. The boy turned, eyes widened. He dropped the nurse's hand and sprinted across the hallway. They met in the middle, collapsing into each other. I thought they took you away forever, Adam sobbed. I thought you were dead, Murat whispered. They didn't speak for a long time, just held each other, survivors of the same nightmare, anchored only by memory and love. Meanwhile, Rafi stood outside their room, watching through the glass. He had never cried in front of his brother, but now the tears came fast, because now he knew what he did mattered. His voice had saved more than one life. He had fought through doubt, through mockery, through fear, and he was right. He didn't just save his brother. He started a rescue, a war against the silence. Over the next few weeks, more hatches were found, some empty, some worse. Arrests were made, an entire trafficking ring brought down. The courtrooms filled with faces who had once hidden in the shadows, now exposed by a dusty photograph and a brother who wouldn't stop searching. The government issued a public statement honoring the bravery of both Rafi and Adam, but Rafi never cared for the applause. He just wanted one thing: peace. One rainy morning, months later, a statue was unveiled in the field where it all began. Not of a hero with a sword or a man with a badge, but of a little barefoot boy, clutching a photograph to his chest. Looking toward the horizon, the plaque read, "To the child who listened to silence and answered with hope." Rafi stood beside it, Adam's hand in his, surrounded by people who once doubted him. He looked up at the sky, took a deep breath, and whispered, "I told you, brother, I'd find you. I'd find you." Months had passed since the day Rafi cracked open the iron hatch and called out into the void. The world above had moved on quickly. Press conferences ended. Journalists packed their gear and TV specials gave way to newer tragedies. But for Rafi, for Adam, and for the children rescued from the dark, the story had never ended. It had only changed. They were healing now, slowly, unevenly. Murat had begun to smile again, though his sleep was still haunted. Adam had started drawing again, filling his sketch pad with fields and open skies. He no longer sketched walls, ladders, or broken light bulbs. His colors had returned, and Rafi had grown quieter, not from sadness, but from reflection. The attention overwhelmed him at first. Schools invited him to speak. Parents asked him to talk to their children about courage. The government offered him a medal, but none of it felt real. What felt real was his brother's hand in his own. What felt real was the laughter that slowly returned to their home. Their mother had taken on extra shifts just to afford therapy, sessions for Adam and Murat. She never complained. But Rafi saw the tired lines under her eyes, the way she clutched the grocery list with shaking hands, so he started helping more. Walking dogs in the neighborhood, fixing broken shutters, collecting bottles, anything to carry his weight, even. Just a little, because now he understood something that most boys his age hadn't learned yet. When you see darkness, you light the match yourself. Detective Farah Sahin visited them often. She never came with reporters, never asked for interviews. She just brought pastries, tea, and books for Adam. Sometimes she'd sit on the floor beside them, listen to Rafi's questions about how she found the other hatch, and tell stories from her years as an officer. One day Rafi asked her the question that had been haunting him. Did they get all of them? Farah hesitated, then said softly, "Not yet, but we will. And you're the reason we even knew where to start." Nodded, then don't stop. A year later, the field where the hatch had been buried bloomed with thousands of wildflowers, sunflowers, daisies, violets planted by hand one by one. By volunteers and families who had been touched by the story. Rafi stood there with Adam and Murat holding watering cans. They came every week, sometimes to water, sometimes just to sit and be quiet. It had become their place, not of sadness, but of memory. That day, a new plaque was unveiled. It read, "In honor of all the voices that were nearly lost, and the one voice that found them." The trafficking network had been vast, international, but it was unraveling, stitch by stitch. Thanks to the evidence uncovered by that first hatch, more chambers were found, and more children freed. Rafi's photograph, the one he clutched so tightly the morning he ran barefoot through the dirt, had become a symbol of persistence, of love, of belief when no one else believed. He never asked for recognition, but the world gave it anyway. Years passed. Rafi grew tall, and so did Adam. They stayed close. Their bond had been forged not just by blood but by survival, by the promise one brother made when no one else would listen. Rafi would often be asked why he never gave up. He would pause, thinking back to the weight of the silence beneath the earth, the sound of that first knock rising from the hatch, the cold iron against his skin, and then he'd answer, "Because I heard him." He'd smile, looking toward Adam, and brothers always hear each other, even in the dark. In a quiet corner of the town's central library, a small exhibit was installed. One spring, photos, drawings, letters, and the battered photograph Rafi once carried. Visitors would pause, some wiping tears, others hugging their children tighter, and above the glass case, one line was written in bold. He ran with a photo. He returned with hope.